just got through my MX5 3.75, so the later, the second facelift front bumper. It's from a recovery supplier, so there's going to be some marks and some bits I need to fix. But considering they're about £400 new, there was definitely a saving to be had. So look out on eBay and stuff for the dismantlers and things that have got these. Let's unwrap all this and crack on. So as I said, this was from a dismantler, so I knew it had some damage. It's got some scuffs and things. This was labelled up as a dent. A dent's easier to deal with because obviously you can fill it, but this was actually, it was dented but also creased here and pushed out. These are a couple of creases that were out as well. So what I've been using is a heat gun, so just heating up the area and pushing in the creases, pushing in these areas to get them flatter, because we can always build up with filler. What I'm going to do is I'm going to back, because it's weakened, I'm going to back this area with some glass fibre reinforcement on the back, then obviously sand this down and then fill it so it's smooth. Add another area here, so obviously the damage has gone into this and it's kind of cracked this lip and it creased this front edge. So what I've done, I'm still going to work on this one, is I heated this up, and it's quite malleable. You can push it back. I've been using a screwdriver just to hold it back and get it back into place. And then obviously this glass fibre, I'm going to reinforce the back, and I'm going to take it round the corner and reinforce this lip. Take all this back as much as I need to, fill it, make that good. So I've roughened up the area of the plastic bumper where I want to put some fiberglass reinforcement, especially in this area, this lip, probably up into this area. Just went to tool station and got a big boy fiberglass repair kit. Comes with that much fiberglass, so I'm going to cut it into the shape I want, probably a good couple of layers on that, following the instructions of this, and see if we can patch that up. So I've laid on 3 layers of that main section. I've got it into the corners. I wanted to support this lip that goes around the front of the bumper. So there's a little bit of overlap there that I'll just cut off when it's done. But so I've made sure I've got into this area here and up and round, and then this is supporting that bit that's got weak from the impact of the front. So that should, when that's all got off, it should strengthen it all up. The only other thing I've noticed is I'm missing some of these. So there's a clip there, but I'm missing them all around that edge. So I'm going to see how that affects how the grille goes on. Might have to make some kind of fixing system up for that, but generally it's all right. So I've sanded it all back with 400 grit sandpaper, just giving the base a key. Obviously the main area to focus on with some filler was this area, so it's not very neat. I don't do this very often, so I'm just trying to build that bit up because there were some dips there. So if I got to sand and work that area for quite a long time, then fair enough. Building up this inside bit, because that was where it was a little bit there was actually a split there, wasn't there, before I put the GRP behind. And then I've just used some excess that I had just going over. It's amazing, once you sanded it you see all the stone chips, so I've gone over most of the stone chips. It looks like a cow now, doesn't it? Gone over most of the stone chips, just filling it in, really thin coat, so they'll just sand off and flatten, and that's fine. This is the bit I'm working on at the moment. So obviously there was a little bit of damage on this side and there was some damage on the front there. So that's the first bit of filler that's being rubbed down, and I need a little bit more to raise it up in certain sections, because you can see I'm rubbing into the original bumper there. So there's obviously dots there that need to be raised. This section here dips a little bit, so that needs some more filler to go through there and keep that nice shape. But it's worth just working at it bit by bit. A lot better than it was before. Still working hard getting the bumper ready for primer. This area had been sanded down. I think I said before there were some low spots, so I put some more primer on there. I fixed the plastic catch that was here, but because I fixed it I had to melt some plastic, so I need to fill that. Another little update, so I sanded it back. I knew there was some spots that little bits had come out and there was little low spots, but a trick someone told me, and I don't know if I did it properly, but basically cleaned it up and then I just lightly sprayed some primer over that area, and then obviously straight away you could see bits that weren't right anyway, but then if you sanded it gently you could then see the high and low spots. So that's what I did. I've then gone and got some fresh filler, and I filled in, there was a low spot here. I was basically sanding it flat rather than sanding it curved, so I filled that bit, and then these bits will just a little bits that needed filling just on little edges and things like that. So going pretty well. You know, that side, that bit is nearly fully rebuilt. There was a clip here that was cracked along here, so I heated it up. I put a piece of wood underneath, I heated it up with an air gun, a hot air gun, and then just got a screwdriver and manipulated the plastic along the crack, and that's now strong and rigid again. But obviously where I was messing with the plastic, that created some issues, so I've just put a bit of filler on there, so it's better than it was. So yeah, not bad. So over at my friend Hayden's, getting the bumper ready for the first bit of spraying. So as always, prep is key. Going over, getting any little nicks with any primer, getting that done. The slight damage area on this side is now looking really good. So we've gone over the whole panel with 240 grit, so it's got the key for the high build primer. We're then going to panel wipe it, because obviously you've got the dust from all the filler. So we're going to panel wipe it, get it all ready for paint, and then we're going to put 3 coats of high build primer from U-Pole on it. And then once you've got that paint on, that's when you'll be able to see whether you've got any imperfections that you need to sand out, that type of thing. But yeah, it's looking good. We're going to do the first bit of paint. We've got the tow bar cutouts. Always remember to paint those as well. So over on the table over there, I've got 2 of those just in case I lose one in the future. So I've got the tow hook cutouts. Going to spray that at the same time, and hopefully get it all done today. Get the primer done today anyway. Mixing up the primer. So we're using U-Pole. So it's 2K. So it's a high build primer. So it should fill sort of small scratches and things like that, very small scratches and things like that. So we're going to do 3 coats of that. And then it'll probably get a sand back. If there's any big problems, it'll get an 800 grit sand. If we find there's some bigger issues that we need to fix, it'll probably maybe a 600 grit. When we were mixing it up, it seemed a little bit thick. So when they say use it as a high build primer, it is using no thinners, but it does seem just a tad thick. So we're just going to add a little bit of 2K thinner, and just get that in the gun and hopefully get started. So we're just putting a tiny bit of thinners in, and we're finding it was a little bit thick, and if you spray it like that, it can be a bit orange peely on the primer, and then that can obviously mean more sanding and things. But because we haven't really got that many imperfections on the bumper, well, we don't think we have, we've gone a little bit thinner. We put a little bit of thinners in it, and we're going to spray it like that and get it in the gun through the filter up there, and crack on and see if I can spray. So using the Fiberglass gun today, it's got a 1.8 tip. We're running it at 2 bar on pressure, and as you can see on the panel behind, we've been doing some spray outs. We have it on maximum fan, so pretty much stays on that. As you can see, obviously the thickness of the paint going through, you really want something a bit like this where it's got no runs, it's not heavy. Obviously too much paint here is too thick, laying on, you're going to get runs. And then we also tried out here, which is too thin, and that's not working either. So get it about right, so it's about these kind of ones in the middle, so you've got no runs, you've got no orange peely kind of look, and we're going to give the primer a go. So we've done 3 coats of primer on there, just turning off all the fans that we've been using because of 2K. Would, if we were doing lots more panels and more time in here, we'd use a full air kit, you know, ventilator. But we're just using the mask today because we're not in here for very long. Little things that obviously always when you're doing primer and you just get a tiny little bit of dust, there's a little bit of there's a hair there or whatever, but that's all going to come out when it dries off and we sand it back. You always notice a couple of little things. There's a little mark there that we're just going to fill in, and there's a little mark there on the edge there that we'll sort out as well. But otherwise, it's gone really well. The panel that took all the fixing here, can't see it at all. Looks really good. So yeah, really pleased. So following on, there was a couple of little dents we could find. So there's a little bit of filler went on in a couple of areas. We've sanded that down. We've then put a guide coat on, which is like a guide coat to see, you know, when we're now going to sand it down, because this primer is actually quite orange peely, and we're going to sand it down, and the guide coat shows you when you've gone through and you're sanding properly. So that's it now. So we're doing 600 grit on here, wet 600, and keep sanding. Bits where we just had to, so we sanded it all in 600. There was some patches where it's so easy to go through on some edges, so we use a bit of spray primer just to touch up a couple of edges. So we've gone around on that. That's all dried off. Now we're going to do 800 grit over the whole thing, and hopefully once the 800 grit's done, then that is ready for base coat. So to fit the front dam, there's actually a few holes that you need to put in the lower section of the bumper. The instructions aren't particularly clear, but just keep referring back to your splitter, and some are on the front face and some are on the back face, but hopefully it's self-explanatory. So this is the first time you've seen the club lip that's going to fit underneath the bumper. This is the back side of it. That's the bit you actually see from the front. This has been primed up, so it comes in quite a textured finish. So primed it up, now sanding it back with 800 to get a nice flat finish. And then that'll be at the same stage as the bumper, which is just over there, which is basically ready for base coat. And this is going to be gloss black. So it should stand out really nicely against the grey and everything else. I've got gloss wheels, I've got a gloss carbon rear spoiler, so it should all go together nicely. So we're in the spray booth. We've got the bumper here, everything's in primer. It's been sanded back with 800, then 600. Like I said before, the lip had a textured finish on the front, but sanded that before we primed it, and then 4 coats of primer, sanded it back, and it's smooth on both sides now, so that will take the gloss paint really nicely. So obviously when base coat goes on, there's more prep to do in the booth, so you want to keep dust to a minimum. So the floor has been obviously brushed. It was then wetted to keep the moisture down, so we're just taking much more precautions now because it doesn't really matter in primer, but on base coat it does. So they've all been panel wiped. We've got the bumper, the lip, and we've got the emblem that's going to be done in black as well. So yeah, all coming together, and we're just about to look at doing base. So this is base coat, 3 coats of base coat we've had on this. So we're just about to do the 2K clear. It's looking good, all the blemishes are gone, all the filling is worth it. And then over here we've got the front club lip done in like a jet black, solid black. That's also going to get lacquered. That looks really good as well. So let's crack on, let's get the lacquer done. So the second layer of lacquer going on, we've got the 2 little toe hook bits here that we're doing, and then obviously going over the second layer of the body. So we've done 2 coats on the little towing eyes. We think we're going to leave those because we don't want to cut and buff them. And this is the 3rd coat of lacquer going on both items. So hopefully, in theory, this is the last coat. So over to you. So hopefully this is the last day on the front bumper. This is straight after Clearcoat, so now there's some sanding to do. There's a little bit of denibbing, probably the worst one if you can see that. It's a little raised section there. You get tiny little things in the paint. Oh, you can't even hardly see that one, but just going to sand over just those little bits in 1200 and get those down. Then we're going to sand the whole thing, I believe, in 1500, then 2000, and then 3000. But the problem is, I've got the car here today. Got to get the bumper on. If we don't get the bumper on, I'm pretty sure we might lose the shop, and that's going to be devastating to all of us. So this bumper is everything. Got to get this finished today. So like I said, just going around denibbing. I've got a tiny small square of 1200, and any little blemish you've got, you know, like a bit of like a hair or a bit of fluff or whatever that's landed in the gel coat. I'm talking about GRP. Clear. Just denib it. Just trying to sand it back without going through clear. So I denibbed with 1200, then I denibbed just on the nib areas with 1500. Now I'm going over with 1500 over the whole panel with a block, trying to take out most of the imperfections or any imperfections. There is some slight orange peel on this side, so this is the kind of thing that would just take off the tops of the orange peel and really start to bring it up. So wet sand 1500, just keep on going, sanding. So I've sanded first of all over with 1500. I've washed it all off and let it dry, and then you can go back to it, and I don't know if you can see on the camera, I hope you can, maybe this area, so you can see how smooth this section is, and then you can see the orange peely bit coming there where I haven't sanded as much, most probably because I wasn't wanting to go through edges and stuff. So there's a bit here, there's a patch here. As you work your way up, you can see it grinning through here and here. So the best thing to do is then go back, you find all your points like here that you need to go back with the 1500, because you need to get the 1500 is the bit that's taking off this top and making it smooth. The 2000 and up is really just polishing out the scratches. So this is where you need to do all the work. If you want to get that orange peely look back, then you've got to keep sanding with your 1500. So that's what I continue to do on all these little bits, and get ready to do the 2000. So the bumper is looking good. So I've gone over the whole thing with 1500, like I said before. Keep washing it down, letting it dry off, seeing where you then need to sand. As you can see, it's sanded right back, and as far as I can see at the moment, there isn't any orange peel type surface left. So now it's 2000 grit to start getting rid of the 1500 grit scratches. So 2000 and then 3000, that's what we're going with. So the bumper over there is now in 3000, been done in 3000 grit. Now looking at the lip, this is the bottom face of it. There is some orange peel, but considering this is going to be on the bottom of the car and no one sees it, I'm just going to leave it as thick as possible for like chip protection and stuff. So all I'm going to look at is this part at the top here. There doesn't seem to be any denibbing required, so I'm going to get straight in with 1200, 1500, 2000, 3000. Exactly the same as I was doing with the front bumper. Get this front edge done, and then we're really going for it. So I'm hoping you can see this on camera, but I've literally started buffing with this great buffer here, buffing this center section. And I've just done it on the first stage of the compound stage. This is DA coarse, not too much on the pad, and then hopefully you can kind of see from here how obviously that's sanded to 3000, how dull it is, and then you hit this section and it's just silky smooth. So now I need to buff up the rest of it. There's then a second going over with a finer grade, and this thing is looking really good. And then when you've got a section like this, it's looking dull or I've just gone over it. Look at the shine that appears there. Absolutely awesome. Hope that can be picked up on camera because that is glistening. So I've been over with the coarse grit. I've now changed pad to a foam pad and doing the fine side of things. So going over it, just again, it's coming up really nicely. Real mirror finish on that. So once this stage is done, I've done this side of things. If you can see that in the camera work, I haven't done that side. Once that's all done, I've got to start putting all the plastics on, and we're really getting to the end of things. So another section to put together is your front fog lamp. Right on there. The front fog lamps, I'm pretty sure these just fit in. Yep. And that is your fog lamp surround put in. So one part you do need is this metal top to the bumper. So there's some of these little weird screws that you can undo and they come out, but these are rivets and they're going to need to be drilled out and then replaced. So that's a bit of a pain. I wasn't really thinking about that, so that's something to consider. So putting the fog light, so the fog light from the 3.5 fits the 3.75 housing. Both bolts either side snapped going into the aluminium housing, so literally had to weld something on the end, get those bolts out, so do watch out. It's the normal Mazda problem when the bolts snap off. So I've got a new bolt in there. This all lines up with those holes. The 3 screws from the old bumper look like they're going to be the right ones for this one. Quick look on the other side just to see how that's turning out. Nice. Look at that. So I've polished up the lip the same as the bumper. So that's been done in 2 stages of buffing. Now looking at the instructions that come with the lip, you have these fasteners that you have to put in different places. You know, I could obviously tell you, but it's gonna, you know, it's all in the instructions. You've got to clip a few of these in and go from there. So we got 3 studs, and then we've got captive nuts on here, so you get a little bolt and nut kit. So let's see if I've drilled the holes in the right place. Yes. And then just need to just hold that in. Yep, so those have gone in spot on. So I've now fixed the lip in. There's nuts and bolts that run in pre-marked holes, as we discussed earlier, along the bottom. So that's all sorted now, and then it looks like when you have these tabs on the bottom, the under tray is going to go between, and then that's going to go on top, and then you're going to bolt through the whole thing. So that should be fine, but let's show that in a minute. And this is the moment we've all been waiting for. Yep. Down to you. Oh, the black badge, looking awesome. I'll show you as you go along, but this is the old bumper. They're not too hard to get off, probably around about 20 minutes. You need to take both wheels off. I'll show you this. You need to take both wheels off. The bolts around the top here, so take those off. The bolts on the front of the under tray, you take those off. The inner guards, you need to take the front clips out of the plastic wheel arch guards, pull them back, and I can't remember off the top of my head, there's 2 or 3 bolts holding the bumper in. So I'm going to start just by taking these ones off, and I'll show you the other process as we go. So these ones across the top, 10mm spanner. So the first time, and probably the only time you'll see on my videos that I've actually got a lift to help me, so it's obviously not mine. But I've taken out all the bolts along the front here of the top edge. So we're trying to get the bumper off. So what we need to do now is undo a number of these clips. And then you don't need to take this whole panel out, you just need to bend it back and get to the bolts underneath. So I'll show you that when we get to the bolts. Once you've got your inner guard loose, then what you've got is you need to undo these bolts for the under tray all the way along, under tray on the side of the bumper. So you can either use a screwdriver or a ratchet. So those are the next steps. So the bolts holding on the bumper to the wing are up in there. I've just got one nut off there, so it's that one, and there's another one up there, so that's those two. So get those out from the inner guard area. Then you've got two bolts that are in the front bumper here, one each side, so you've got to get those out.
Clun says the paint looks good, and that's actually really good.
Sexy. It's going to look at that. So, when I was ordering from Japan, I ordered these two plastic parts, not knowing what they were, but they looked fairly important on the diagram. Until now, we hadn't worked out what they were, so it's these ones. And what they do is they go down in the corner of the inner guard and attach to the bumper and the under tray and fill in this corner on both sides. So obviously there's a different, the 3.5 must be sculpted in, and there was a gap. So yeah, so I found out where these go, and you two rivets in, and then they give you a point for the inner guard to go onto, so that's great. So this is the finished article, driven home last night, and already has some bugs and dirt on the front, as you'd expect, but it's looking really good. The paint match is good, as with metallics. From certain angles it looks like a complete match, and then from other angles, because of how the metallics lie, it can look different, but I see that on OEM painted Mazdas, because the plastic bumpers are painted separately to the body, so it's a pretty normal thing. So happy with all that, love the new look. Some people say it's got a smiley face. I do see that, but I also see the aggressive stance compared to the other bumpers, especially with the addition of the club lip. That looks really good, especially once we sanded it back and used and made it gloss. That's really nice. Yeah, I think, see there, you can see, looks like a slight colour change just because we've moved around. It's literally just the angle. Normally, if you then go there, yeah, it looks pretty close. But I'm happy with that. It looks really smart. Basically brings it right up to date. You can't get any more modern for an NC3 or NC3.75 or whatever you want to name it. Yeah, really happy with that. Black badge looks wicked, in keeping with all the other black parts I've got on the car. Just gets rid of all that chrome rubbish that we shouldn't have on it, and looks really good.